According to U.S. intelligence sources, Iran has indeed begun deploying mines in the waters of the Strait of Hormuz. The operation remains relatively limited for now. Available estimates suggest that between roughly 20 and 50 mines have been laid over the past few days. This does not yet constitute a large or dense minefield capable of physically blocking all navigation, but it is a real and confirmed deployment that represents an important qualitative shift in the dynamics of the conflict. This development is significant because it moves the situation from a stage of preparation, loading mines onto vessels, conducting exercises, and positioning mine-laying boats, to a concrete operational action at sea. In July 2025 and early 2026, observers and analysts had already reported increasing signs of preparation. As of March 10, 2026, the transition from preparation to actual deployment appears to have occurred. Despite the losses Iran has suffered since the start of hostilities, more than 50 Iranian vessels are believed to have been destroyed in total, according to available estimates. The naval forces of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, retain the vast majority of their operational capabilities in this area. Current analyses indicate that between 80 and 90% of Iran's small boats and mine-laying vessels remain operational. This figure is crucial because it means that Iran's ability to disrupt the Strait of Hormuz has not been fundamentally degraded by U.S. military operations so far. In terms of stockpiles, estimates from the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency, DIA, and independent analysts place Iran's total mine inventory at more than 5,000 devices. These include a variety of modern systems, bottom mines that sit on the seabed and detonate when ships pass overhead, influence mines that react to acoustic, magnetic, or pressure signatures, and self-propelled mines capable of traveling significant distances after being deployed. In theory, if a political and military decision were made to escalate, Iran could deploy several hundred mines in a very short period of time. In response to these developments, the United States has adopted both a military and diplomatic posture. Operationally, U.S. Central Command and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth have announced the destruction of several Iranian vessels involved in mine-laying or mine transport activities. The numbers vary slightly depending on the source. About 10 inactive vessels were mentioned by Donald Trump himself, while CENTCOM and Reuters have cited figures of up to 16 destroyed ships. The explicit objective of these strikes is to prevent mine-laying from expanding uncontrollably. Trump referred to the vessel's total destruction, adding that more is coming, signaling a clear willingness to continue preventive operations. Beyond mine-laying vessels, U.S. forces have also targeted land-based facilities used to store naval mines in order to neutralize the mining threat at its source before the devices even enter the water. On the public messaging front, Donald Trump chose to speak directly through Truth Social. In his message, he demanded that Iran immediately remove all mines placed in the strait. He coupled this demand with an explicit warning: failure to comply would lead to military consequences at a level never seen before. Trump also stated that at the moment of his post, the United States did not yet possess official confirmation that mines had actually been laid, an important nuance that may reflect a delay of several hours between intelligence reporting and formal validation within the command chain. He further indicated that any mine detected would be treated as a terrorist threat, potentially opening the door to broader legal and operational responses. To understand the broader context of this development, it is important to note that the Strait of Hormuz has effectively been closed for commercial navigation since the beginning of March 2026. On March 2nd, the IRGC officially declared it closed and threatened to attack any vessel attempting to pass through it. Since then, maritime traffic has been almost non-existent. A few sporadic transits have been recorded, mainly involving ships belonging to what analysts refer to as the dark fleet or shadow fleet, vessels operating outside official registries, often without active AIS transponders, typically used to circumvent sanctions or conflict zones. However, standard commercial tankers, the ones that normally transport between 15 and 20% of the world's seaborne oil and liquefied gas through this route, have disappeared entirely from the area. This effective closure is not primarily due to the presence of mines, at least not yet. Instead, it results from several overlapping factors: direct threats from the IRGC, drones, missiles, and armed fast boats, maritime insurers refusing to cover war risks in the region, with war risk premiums reaching prohibitive levels, and the general caution of ship owners faced with extreme operational uncertainty. If a dense minefield were added to this situation, the crisis would become even more difficult to resolve. Naval mines occupy a unique place in maritime warfare. They are the quintessential asymmetric weapon, inexpensive to produce and deploy, yet extremely difficult, time-consuming, and dangerous to neutralize. Clearing even a modestly contaminated maritime area can require weeks or months of painstaking work by specialized teams equipped with minesweepers, seabed sonar systems, and sometimes underwater robots. Even a single undetected mine can cause catastrophic damage to a large oil tanker or container ship. This is precisely what makes the Iranian threat so serious. Even a limited deployment of a few dozen mines creates enough uncertainty to deter ship owners and insurers from sending vessels through the strait. The mere possibility of a mine can paralyze shipping. If Iran were to deploy its stockpiles on a large scale, several hundred or even thousands of devices, clearing the strait could take months, regardless of any U.S. military action aimed at destroying Iran's mine-laying capabilities. Iran, however, faces constraints in this domain. A massive mining of the strait would carry significant risks for Tehran itself. Economically, the Strait of Hormuz is also the only exit route for the limited Iranian oil exports that still exist despite sanctions. A generalized minefield would block both friendly and hostile ships alike, effectively cutting Iran off from its own export routes. Furthermore, laying mines on a large scale in international waters would represent such a dramatic escalation that it could justify a major military response from the international community, particularly the United States, including reinforced naval escorts, large-scale mine-clearing operations, and extensive strikes against Iranian military infrastructure. It is within this fragile balance between the capacity to inflict disruption and the risk of retaliation that Tehran's current strategy appears to lie, deploying enough mines to signal determination and raise diplomatic pressure, but not so many as to cross the point of no return that would trigger a devastating U.S. response. The economic consequences of this crisis are already beginning to emerge. Oil prices started rising as soon as the first reports about mine deployment circulated. This reaction is unsurprising. The Strait of Hormuz is the transit point for roughly 1/5 of the world's seaborne oil. Any sustained disruption, whether real or merely anticipated, mechanically pushes prices upward, especially in a context where global reserves cannot easily absorb a prolonged supply shock. If the situation worsens and the strait remains closed for several more weeks, experts expect significant price increases that could affect major importing economies, particularly in Asia. China, Japan, South Korea, and India are among the most dependent on Gulf oil. The United States, although less exposed thanks to its own production boom, would still be vulnerable to global price shocks. In summary, as of March 10, 2026, the situation can be described as follows. The crisis has moved from a stage of advanced preparation to a confirmed but still limited deployment of naval mines, according to U.S. intelligence sources. The United States has responded preventatively with military strikes against mine-laying vessels and storage facilities, while issuing extremely serious public warnings. Iran retains most of its capabilities and could escalate rapidly if it chose to do so. The strait has effectively been closed since early March, mainly due to direct threats and the withdrawal of maritime insurance coverage, but the addition of a real minefield would dramatically worsen the crisis. Oil markets are already reacting, and the situation is evolving hour by hour, with each announcement capable of shifting the fragile balance in one of the world's most strategically critical regions.